welcome back. Today we're taking a look at this Toro Timecutter 42-inch mower. It's seen some better days, no doubt. Good friend of mine brought it in and said that the person he got it from said it had a hole in the block and that it was going to need a new engine. He's been wanting a zero turn for as long as I can remember. I've been looking out for one for him. Don't really come across much in the way of smaller zero turns, so he's been waiting for a little while, came across this one. I told him I'd see what I couldn't do to get it back going. Don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button as we go along with this diagnostic and repair if you enjoy the content. First thing I did on this, not dissimilar from the very last video, is I checked the oil. Well, guess what? Same thing as before. Gas is into the crankcase, it's filled up, and there's oil all over the base of the engine. Now I did look, and as I was looking around, yeah, this seat's in real good shape. As I was looking around, I did notice that there is not a hole in the block. I wonder if they saw oil coming from the block somewhere or from the breather tube or something and just thought that it was done for. We can see as we take a look, it's been a while since this thing's been ran. It's got stuff all over it that's kind of oil and gas soaked. It's got the Briggs single cylinder overhead valve engine on it, kind of like all of these do. This thing's not exactly a newer model or anything, but I think we should be able to get it back going. It's got Twin City Power Equipment sticker on it. Well, they changed their name here in town about, I don't know, 20 years ago. So it's got some life on it for sure. No hour meter, so we can't exactly check that. Again, I kind of went all down around the side and looked, and I definitely don't see any hole in the block. Seems to be freed up. It may have a blown head gasket. Kind of looks like it's all oily down there. That's not surprising if we've got oil on the crankcase like we do. See, it's all the way filled up. It's a gas oil mix, and it's up to right about that first bend is where it is. So it's not extremely overflowed or anything, but I wonder if that's just because a lot of it ended up all over the bottom and the sides. The engine's not locked up. It spins over freely, so that's definitely a good sign. He did say when he originally got this, he tried to fire it up. Why, I'm not really sure when somebody told him it had a hole in the block, but he says he was able to get it started, and then he said something was shooting out of the side. Probably gas oil mix, if I had to guess. That was a little while ago. It's been sitting out for a little while since then. We're gonna address a carb issue to begin with here before we do anything else. I'm gonna try to get this cowling a little more out of the way. We have a good view here. Take these front two off. Now we've got two 3/8 bolts at the back. Now we can remove, oh, that's nice, the air cleaner's in there, just kind of sitting there backwards. Can remove the whole engine housing, just comes straight up and off. Very kind of surprised that it doesn't look horrible in here. So we're going to take the fuel line off. We'll go ahead and drain all this fuel out since we don't know where it's from. Probably end up replacing at least some of this fuel line, if not all of it. It seems kind of brittle. Well, I'm not sure there's any fuel left in it. It does come from the bottom of the tank on this one, but there is a shut off here, so let's see. Fuel is not shut off. Must be empty. No problem. We'll take the carburetor the rest of the way off. We'll unplug it. There's just a plug there on the bottom. Pull it off. This thing's definitely been rode pretty hard though. You can tell by the amount of stuff all over it. Not really sure this engine's going to be perfect for him or anything, but It's one of those that it's a good friend, so if anything happens to it, it's not going to be a problem. Not charging them to do it to begin with. Alright, carburetor is all free. We'll use our extractor to pull the fuel oil mix out of it. About done. We'll pull the oil filter also. Doesn't take long when gas oil mix, real thin stuff. Yeah, more gas than it is oil there coming out. Surprised this thing hasn't went up in flames, the amount of debris on it. It's just jam-packed under here. It's all gas oil soaked. Real bad shape. Well, we've got this nice clean carburetor here. It's in pretty rough shape, ain't it? I'm gonna take off the two 7/16 nuts off the outside if I can get to them, around all the oil and grease and grass buildup. It's just crazy. We'll also take off the two with the 5/16 there at the front. Now we got the carburetor off. Intake tube is just kind of caked also. See what this looks like on the inside. Actually looks halfway decent on the inside, very, very surprisingly. Wow. Not exactly what I was expecting. That needle is completely hard. Doesn't look like there's anything down in the seat at all or anything like that. It looks like really basically if we wanted to clean this carburetor, I think we sure could to get it back running well. I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to throw a new carb on it. If you're wondering how to clean this, basically you can take this jet out here. You can take the jet and the emulsion tube out down through there. And you want to spray through, make sure all those holes are real clear. Make sure your needle in your seat is clear down in here. Make sure your float actually floats. And that your solenoid pops back out just like such. If not, you'll have to clean all down in there real well. But blow down through all these jets and clean everything off if you're going to do that. I'm kind of perplexed on whether I want to do that or not. With as filthy as this thing is, I think I'm going to skip it. I'm sure it could come back, but I'll go ahead and throw one on there for my friend. Let's just get this all cleaned up halfway decent here. Of course, we always power wash everything before we send it back to a customer, let alone this one to a buddy. But the more stuff you get off now, the easier it is later to get cleaned up. Figured we probably didn't need another carburetor cleaning video on a wall, bro. A million different ones out there on that. Halfway decent, a lot better than it was. Usually use the OEM intake gasket. Going to be a little bit thicker than those ones that come with the aftermarkets. And this carburetor, if you look at it next to the other one, the only difference is that this one comes at an angle. Everything else is virtually the same. There's a little tab on the top of this one. Just going to snip it off. That way it doesn't get caught on something. Most of the time they don't get caught on anything anyway, but every now and again one of them does. Snip it to begin with. Make it just like the other one. You know you're not going to have any issues. Good there. This one was kind of beat up as it came in. It's kind of bent at the top here. Box was all torn up. Looking pretty good. We will replace this O-ring also. These O-rings are going to be the same both at the front of the carburetor and at the back. Otherwise you're going to pull a bunch of stuff in there. So that's the same number both there and at the back side here in between the intake tube and the block. Good there. Now we can reinstall this carburetor. We'll get that fuel line and stuff replaced first. Get all this stuff blown out of our way. So as we take a closer look at the shutoff here and at the fuel line, the grommet seems to be cracked or not in good shape there. So we're going to replace this fuel line going through and the grommet at the same time. Just going to pull it straight down. Easier said than done. If I can't get my needle nose in there. It's coming now. Just going to take these 3/8 screws out of the side, get a little better access. Much better access. All right. Straight down and out. Our fuel filter came out of there. Grommet. And our line, that again, not in real good shape. When I cut that, I mean, that's just brittle as can be. So we'll put some new line on there. And that's an 07-392 grommet. Pretty well the same on everything out there. Put our filter back up in. And we'll put our grommet in the tank. And then go ahead and put our shutoff back up through. I wonder if that's where it was leaking to begin with, and that's why we didn't have any fuel left. Kind of seemed like that grommet was pretty well cracked. Guide this through. Before we get this car back on, I always like to put another oil filter on that didn't have gas oil mixed in it, and run some oil through that before I switch out the oil again to make sure that there's no more gas left in the crankcase as we go. I am going to cut this, put a fuel filter here. The stuff that was left in that, it's a tiny little bit in the line. Golly, that stuff smells pretty stinking bad. And get the carb on, and then I'll cut that down to size where it needs to be. Line that all up just like such. And then we'll also want our breather tube to go on there. Great. Make sure that's all cleaned up at the intake. Wouldn't be surprised if once we get this thing fired up that we realize it has a blown head gasket from what I'm seeing. That's okay, we'll address that as it comes. Going to cut that quite a way shorter than what it is. Basically want it to be probably about like that. grab us a new spark plug while we're here. Make sure that this cylinder is all free of fuel also. Wow, that is not feeling too good. Wonder how long it's been since this has been out. Boy, that's no good at all. Hoping that's not stripped, it sure feels like it. Doesn't look too terrible. See how the new one goes in. Turn it over here. Not seeing anything in the cylinder there. Seems like we got a good start to it. Not stripped out, surprisingly. Get some oil in it. I put that dipstick back in while I was blowing everything out just to make sure we didn't get anything down in the hole there. I'll go with just enough oil to test run this thing and everything, and then we'll change it out again. Make sure any of that residual gas gets out of there. A little under 1.5 quarts will do that with the oil filter. What we were caught on there. Even though this has that in-tank fuel filter, you still want an auxiliary one too, no doubt. Well, I think we've got everything that we need except for my solenoid on the bottom of the carburetor. I didn't plug it in. Go ahead and plug it in now. Solenoid is working when I turn it to on. Let's see what happens. Let's see here. It is choking fully. Good. There, arms are out. Ooh-wee. Hello, good morning. I'd say this thing definitely runs pretty well for having a blown up engine or a hole in the block. Wouldn't you say? Sometimes things are diagnosed wrong by customers or by anybody who takes a look at it, whether they know what they're doing or not. It depends on how much effort you take into diagnosing that. You know, just because you see oil shooting out the side doesn't necessarily mean that's the case. The smoking on this is all but stopped. I don't even think the head gasket's blown. Great, quick, easy, and cheap fix for my good friend to get him back on the road. Now, the blades won't engage. I'm sure the bearings are probably locked up. Who knows how long this thing's been sitting. I'm going to free all that up and see what else he wants me to do with it. Finish the tune-up, drain the oil out, cycle that through again. Hopefully this helps somebody else out if they're having an issue with fuel in their crankcase or think their engine is blown up or has a hole in the block. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button if you enjoyed the content.